Hey everybody, before we get started, I just remind you this episode is brought to you by our patrons like Ahago Comics and Drago66. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early and lots of other goodies, and will really help us out. Thanks for your support, everybody. Hello everyone, welcome back to Wanted, a special Let's Talk FGO show where we let you know if you want to roll a 5-star or not. So, been a little while since we did this, yeah? It has. I feel like it's been quite a while, actually. It's probably been like maybe 3 weeks since I shot one of these. I could have done one for Maeve in the Ilya banner, but I didn't feel like it. Also, I feel like people know whether or not they want to roll for Maeve a lot. Maybe in future if she gets like a solo banner for something, but yeah. Just as it was, Ilya made more sense. But for this one, where we're going to talk about Nero Bride, I think it is actually very important to do this because, one, while she has had a previous raid up, this is not a new 5-star. You're going to be waiting a while for one of those. But she is a fairly popular character, I want to say. And also, since the last one was Valentine's, it was much earlier this year, it's entirely possible that people, missed their chance and don't know much about her. Especially since some other stuff that happened that we'll cover later. Anyway, we're going to talk about Nero Bride. This is Wanted. In case it's been long enough that you forgot what our format is for these, or maybe this is your first time listening in, because you never know. Wanted is a show where we talk about the 5-star in basically 4 big aspects. We talk about their actual real-life history or mythology, depending on whether they're fictional or not. We talk about their in-setting lore in Fate. We talk about their mechanics, what they actually do as a servant in the FGO game. And then we talk about their actual rarity. Not like the 5-star rarity, like the vagaries of how common they are to roll and whatnot, but we talk about how frequent are their actual raid ups, right? Okay, you got all that? Alright. So, let's jump into Nero Bride. So, first of all, real-life history. Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. Yes, that's the full name. Yeah, we're, for a lot of historical characters, I don't like to talk on this aspect too long, because, quite frankly, there's a lot, alright? Like, a lot of historical characters, big deal, alright? Like, they have a lot of text about them, and Nero's no different. So, I could, spend hours talking about this. There are probably literally multiple hour-long documentaries about this subject. We're not going to do that. One, it is supposed to be relatively quick. Though, obviously, you guys do like a little bit of action. So I will summarize. Nero is the last emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty after the Emperor Claudius reigned from, let's see, where is it? Sorry, I'm double-checking this information. You'd think I'd taken some notes, but no. Alright, so reigned from 54 AD to 68 AD. Doesn't seem like that's super long. Nero's kind of a controversial character and a lot of history, based on the Roman sources of the time period, mostly Suetonius and Cassius Dio, who were much later sources. They were not concurrent with Nero, necessarily, because, for example, Nero's reign ended 68 AD. Cassius Dio, who I just mentioned, was born 155 AD. Alright, so, we're talking hundreds of, decades, maybe a century or two of gap there. So, those are a lot of our earliest, closest to contemporary sources, which characterized Nero as a tyrant or as overly extravagant, which there were probably some aspects of that. Also, in a lot of Christian sources, there's a lot of criticism of Nero because there was a lot of Christian persecution in this time. But modern historians have kind of taken a more reconstructive look, and also there were some positive aspects to Nero's reign. For instance, there was a lot of public works and charity. Some places characterize this as overspending, but we think now, based on more modern information, the economy was already a little depressed or depleted, and Nero's, spending on festivals and construction and just straight charity may have actually been helped to improve the economy. So that's interesting. The famous anecdote, Nero fiddled while Rome burned. That's dumb. The fiddle didn't exist yet. Also, we have some mixed sources. It did appear that Nero may have been out of Rome at the time, or, there's questions of physically fled, or did Nero actually, come back? Possible. It appears that definitely Nero organized a relief effort with his own money and may have spent time doing search and rescue for victims. So, like I said, conflicting sources. It's hard to get a concrete aspect. Also, it's important to remember, especially as we move into how Nero is characterized in Fate, that when Nero was crowned emperor, he was only 16. And for the first 5 or so years, there was a lot of co-government with his mother, Agrippina the Younger. But unfortunately, Nero appears to have gotten a little fed up with her helicopter parenting or rule by proxy through him, and ultimately had her executed. After which point, most sources do seem to agree that Nero's mentality and how positive they were as a leader kind of slowly went downhill until there was ultimately the real. And that said, Nero was supposedly fairly popular in some external provinces, and there were multiple Nero Reborn or Nero Redivivus legends that Nero, came back from the dead, which will play into, which plays into the normal Nero's character, we should say, because Nero Bride does not have a setting sun. Womp womp. Specifically, though, with Bride, there is one thing we want to mention, which, about real-life history, that there is actually a real-life incident, or situation. Some people might, say that it's bad of me to say that it was a quote-unquote incident, but there are historical reports that in 64 AD, during a festival, there was a series of banquets offered to Nero, where Nero, dressed as the role of the bride, married a freeman called Pythagoras, who's not anything to do with the Pythagorean theorem. We don't really have a lot of accounts of this. There's just, like we said, Suetonius, and then some later sources actually digging into this. So, it's entirely possible because, let's see, when was Suetonius born? Yeah, so Suetonius was born in 69 AD, so he wasn't even born until after Nero was deposed, so he's not a contemporary source. It's entirely possible that some of this stuff was made up, but that's where the anecdote that a lot of people would concur Nero Bride is drawn from. So let us transition specifically. Well, what's Nero Bride's lore in Fate? Nero Bride is interesting. She's an alternate form of Nero Claudius, who appears in Fate Extra. Specifically, it is noted in, was it Nasu's blog? Yes, according to Nasu's blog, that the Nero Bride is specifically a version who has not gone to Fate Extra universe, and thus has not met Hakuno, so there's no need to worry about breaking up your OTP, or whatever, about that. It's also theoretically described in some of her background that she, hasn't met a special someone or anything, driven as the bride, but as we just said from the historical anecdote, and other sources, that might be, they're saying, an alternate universe for reasons of strange Japanese culture of waifuism. But the historical Nero, and I think even Extra's Nero is noted in the background, was married multiple times. Both the situation with Pythagoras and several female brides. Nero even had a daughter. We're not even gonna question how that turned out, because sometimes the Naziverse doesn't like to consider how all this stuff means historically. Anyway. So, yeah, that's Nero Bride, is that sort of alternate universe. The mentality has changed. Some of the more negative aspects to deal with Nero are mostly ignored or glossed over in some Fate, but, I mean, that may just be the alternate that is Bride, because she is supposed to be this, particular alternate version seeking love. She's got a different variation on her sword, a slightly different Noble Phantasm variation, etc., etc. In general, there's a lot of, stuff going on there. So, Nero Bride appears prominently in the America chapter of the actual story of FGO. That's about where you get your experience with her, you can meet her. There's a trial quest she has, but there's not really any story in it. There are not really many other issues. She can appear a couple times as, an alternate of the regular Nero in, the CCC event and some other places. And she's technically sort of a separate character, right? We mentioned that she's kind of a what-if question. And that's really all there is about her actual lore and Fate. It's just, she's an alternate character, though sometimes it appears as a costume to the regular Nero from Extra. There are some, questions about the history which seem to be sidestepped to build a literal waifu character. But let's talk about her mechanics and why she's good. So, speaking about mechanics, a subject that is a lot easier to discuss because, quite frankly, it's way more objective than all that subjective history stuff. Because, yes, remember, history is written by people, and it can be confusing sometimes. But anyway, Nero Claudius' bride. So, you can see her core stats and all that stuff thrown up on the screen right about now. Actually, it started several seconds ago, probably, based on my editing style and notes. So, her HP is pretty high. Not the highest, but she's comparable to the likes of Mordred, Artoria, Saber, Shiki, just only a hair below them. Conversely, that also means that for a 5-star Saber, her attack is somewhat lowered. Not super low, it's a pretty tight grouping in there, but she is on the lower tier in there. Alright? She's got Quick, Arts, Buster, Buster. Pretty standard star stats. Her NP charge is pretty good. We're with 3-hit Arts cards. Her NP has only a couple of hits and is Arts-based, so that's probably why. But that does mean she can NP Arts for, gains and recovery. And in general, places are pretty good with the hit counts. Buster's her weakest. Extra's pretty good. Pretty normal stats. It's also important to note that she has a unique alignment at the moment. Chaotic Bride. Very interesting. So, her NP, which is probably one of the things she's really known for, is Fax Caelestis, which deals significant damage to the enemy. Pretty normal scaling for a single target arts. It gives the enemy 5 turns of burn, which is it's only like 500 damage at 100% overcharge, it's not a huge deal, and then also reduces the enemy's defense and critical rate for 5 turns. Slightly better than her 1-turn defense down as an AoE 4-star Saber. And it starts at 20% and maxes at 40%. So that's a pretty good defense down. So obviously you can kind of see what she does here, right? You're going to deal decent damage. You're going to be able to prop them with damage over time and also with a defense and crit reduction, which can be quite significant. And with the ability to do an arts chain and having a fairly okay NP gain, you can reasonably be certain that before those 5 turns are up, Bride's going to be able to get a second shot in. Very useful. I think that's the core of a lot of these single-target arts NPs. You're gonna, drop your NP repeatedly on the enemy, so you soften them up. Now, her skills, though, are pretty great because she's got a support kit, because she has all targetable buffs. It's pretty great, guys. So, first skill is just an NP gain, but it's a big one. It starts at 35% and goes up to 45%. The cooldown's a little high, but still, that is a great booster, alright? You can use it on herself, obviously, to really get that MP going, or pick up another character who's maybe not as great at MP gain. Pretty useful. Second skill is Flowers for the Earth, which, although it does have a slightly longer cooldown timer, is a targetable 30 to 40% attack buff. That's real good. Most charismas that are team-wide max out at like 20%, so this can put a really decent attack buff on your main damager, whether that's Bride herself or somebody else. Also increase the ally's critical star drop rate for 3 turns, 30 to 50% in this case. Again, really good. Really helps out. Bride herself's probably not the best to make use of that because Sabers have fairly average star-related stats, and she's only got the 1 quick card, even though it has a couple hits. But still, it's a decent bonus in there. And then the third skill is Love for the People, which restores one ally's HP 1k to 3k, and increases their defense by up to 20% every 5 turns. This is her lowest cooldown, and it's a great support skill. Slots really into her being a supportive character. Really useful. You can use it to keep her alive with her large HP or affect others. She's not thus as resilient as good old regular Nero is with guts and multiple self-heals, but she slots a lot better into a team player situation. You can use her as the boss killer, giving her stars for the sky and flowers for the earth to, keep that NP chain rolling, doing bigger damage. Or you can slot her with another damage dealer who maybe doesn't have extra attack or extra NP gain, and throw your support around wherever you need it to make a solid hits. And she's even got a couple of Buster cards, so if you need to just do some damage, you can try that avenue. There's not a lot to break down with her skill kit, it's just very good. There's a reason why Bride is often seen in demand. It's not just because she's a literal waifu, but also, like I said, the skills are real good. Real good skills. They define a lot of aspects, I think, of this character. And then her passives aren't much to talk about. There's Magic Resistance C, so you've got a decent little debuff resist buff. And then she's got a Riding B, so her 1 quick card is a little more effective. You're probably not going to use it a whole lot, but if you have to do like an Arts quick, and you're still riding high on like Flowers for the Earth, definitely useful. Now, let's see. Let's go ahead and move into Rarity really quick. There's not a lot to touch on, but, you know, we'll move into how frequent her banners are. Now, being so popular, she has fairly regular rate-ups, but not a lot of them. You guys have already missed Chocolate Lady's Commotion, which was the first one. She was the first rate-up for the first Valentine's event. That'll be replaced next year with MHX Alter. The upcoming Nero Fest 2018, the return of Nero Fest, will be the next rate-up, which is obviously what we're doing this Wanted for. When the CCC collab occurs, there will be a pre-event campaign, which will include her, along with Gilgamesh, Karna, Tamamo, and some other characters who are extra focused, so there's another good time to roll for her. And yes, Nero Festival Redux, the one that was in 2017 in Japan, which included the Bryn rate-up, will also have Nero Bride in it. Thus, we can probably assume that, since there hasn't been a Nero Bride rate-up at all this year, and we're coming up on Nero Fest in Japan, there will presumably be another Nero Bride rate-up. Just saying. It's a good guess. So, like I said, she's fairly popular, but they're fairly well spaced out, so, you know, if you got your chance now, now's a good time to spend on it. Other than that, nope, not really much else to say. Episode turned out to be pretty average length. Alright, guys, so I'm gonna let you guys go. Finished, you know, talking up. Hopefully I've made sense there and you liked it. Just, in general feedback, let me guys know what you think of the episode. I know it's been a while since we did one of these. I'm thinking of maybe some ways we can do a little bit more visual improvement in here. Obviously, part of the appeal of Wanted is that I can make them fairly quickly and throw them out fairly quickly to match up when banners come out, roughly. But I'm not opposed to doing a few visual enhancements. It's just, obviously, I personally have limited tools, so whatever they'd be would have to be pretty simple, or they'd have to be quick enough that, say, I could shoot the video to Lucky, and Editor Lucky could, you know, throw in some stuff really quick with his better tools. We'll see about that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Anyway, gonna let you guys go. If you like this video, give it a like. If you have any comments, like I said, both about Bride and just other stuff I've said about the video, go ahead and leave those in the comments section down below. You can also access our Discord, that link is in the description. And if you're new here, and have not already, please subscribe to get all our content, so you can always get a Wanted video when it comes out, so you can get our regular Let's Talk FGO show, which comes out every week, roughly. No, I'm kidding. We're getting good at turning that around. And don't forget that bell for notifications. Also, like it said at the front of the show, you can support us on Patreon, you can access the episodes early, and other stuff. And it would help us out. Thanks for your time, everybody. Now, you know, let's go get married. I'm not gonna throw that song up because copyright, please.